Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome back for another edition of the ODPH podcast, better known as the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. I am your host, Ken M. Sitting across from me this week, as always, it's Padawan J.
I mean, if I sound a little excited right now, I'm not going to brag a little bit, but I'm going to brag. Ice-T saw one of my tweets on my personal Twitter account and liked it, so I'm a little happy right now.
Yeah, Pat is extremely giddy. If we had a webcam right now, it would be full cheese all over here.
Say any hip-hop fans know how big that is.
Oh, it's a huge deal. Huge deal. But folks, we have a lot to discuss in the land of entertainment, so definitely hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. Join in the conversation. You can find our social media links on OchoDuroParlayHour.com because we have a lot to discuss. It's been a little quiet week, but we still have a couple things we really want to dig into. And one show that flew under the radar for me this season, but we kind of have to talk about it in retrospective because it was the series finale this past week. Of Legion.
One of the trippiest shows in TV history, ever. I will fight anyone on that.
My God. One of the most visually impressive shows you'll ever see. The cinematography, just mind-blowing.
And the visual effects, I would say, were on par with a lot of movies. And I know one of the knocks the CW Arrowverse gets, and even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gets this, is just the special effects don't look that good. And that's to be expected. It's a television show. You know, they're getting whatever budget they get. I'm not entirely familiar with what an average TV show budget is, but they're not getting, the blank check that a lot of movies get for their budgets. But Legion kind of bucked that trend where I would argue the visual and special effects they used in that show over the course of the 3 seasons were on par, if not better than a lot of movies hitting theaters right now.
When it came out, it was a risk, in my opinion, because if you know the history of characters in comics, Legion is not exactly somebody you go, I want to see a show of.
Even if you go to somebody who has read every single X-Men comic book, and I mean every single one, like every spinoff, every mainline, every, what have you, and you go, give me 5 characters you would like to see a TV show based around, I will guarantee you that the percentage of people who say Legion is like less than 5%.
It has to be up there. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, obviously, Legion came to fame in the New Mutants comic. Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz created him early in the run there, and just the history of that character is very complicated, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
It's a very good read if you have the time to track it down on Marvel Unlimited or however you read your comics. Go to the local comic shops and ask about some trades. It's a very interesting read to hear how David Haller emerges as one of the most dangerous mutants in the world. An Omega-level mutant, which was proven in the current House of X, Powers of X storyline.
Yep.
So to see that his character has evolved throughout the comics and been a part of some very big moments. I mean, the one that sticks out to me is he is the reason for the Age of Apocalypse to start. So to hear that he was going to get his own TV show was a very interesting ploy. I mean, I had not really thought of him as like, okay, this is going to work on TV and how is it going to do.
Right.
And when creator Noah Hawley put the show out, it definitely caught my attention and had me guessing each and every week, what am I watching?
Yeah.
Because it really delved into the psyche of David Haller. And going into spoilers, and we are going to be talking spoilers of the show and the season finale too, so you've been fair warned. When you start delving in there, the question I think that every viewer was watching every week was, what is real and what isn't? Because you could not tell.
Yeah.
And we talk about in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when they jump around and they do, different time periods and go back and forth and such.
Yeah.
Legion does it so well and so eloquently that you genuinely don't have an idea what is going on. And the one character that was haunting the entire first season is the character with yellow eyes, which if you want to go through the Twitter lineage, I did call that first episode who it was.
Yeah, you did.
So just pat myself on the back. But as it started going through, you started seeing Dave Stevens, just take the character of David Haller and emerge him into a larger-than-life persona and a very tragic character to say the least.
And you look at it, it really is a good character progression from the first episode of season 1 to where things end up at the end of it all. It starts out very innocently, where it's just this guy in a mental health facility with whatever issues he's got going on, and it's just like he's not quite sure what's going on. Nothing makes sense, and then more things don't make sense, and he figures things out. Like, it's a very good. I don't want to say hero's journey, because it to me doesn't really feel like a hero's journey, but it feels like a very good journey of a character.
Yeah, you can only define Legion as a character. You can't really say hero, and you can't really say anti-hero, too. It just depends on the story he's in. And in this one, I mean, from where it starts and Humble begins, where Stevens really embraces the role and shows you just how damaged this character is, and really portrays him as somebody that is really lost in their way, and like, who is Legion and where it goes from there, and the different characters that are involved. I mean, the standout character on this show, there's two for me.
Okay.
Aubrey Plaza, who played Lenny on this series, was phenomenal.
Especially season 1. Season 1, Aubrey Plaza was just incredible.
Right, because when you start seeing that her character really isn't her character, and just kind of how it dives in to who turns out to be the Shadow King by the time it's all said and done, and just how that plays into the psychological possession of David Haller. This is where Aubrey Plaza just really jumped out and really sunk her teeth into the role and just made it larger than life. Because at this point, you kind of think, okay, who's the friend and who isn't? And it goes back and forth until the great reveal. And when you finally have that payoff, it's so well done, because you think it's her, and then it turns out not to be. And then just how they just intertwine everything like that is truly remarkable. So by the end of season 1, you're thinking, okay, everything's all right. And when they do that weird miniaturized takeaway of David and he's captured by the Foundation there, it's just one of those things that you're going, okay, we had the big payoff, so we know that there's a big X-Men villain in the series. And then how is this going to tie into? Because Legion, for the most part, has been portrayed as an antagonist, albeit though not an intentional one.
Right.
Which is a weird statement to make if you're talking about comic characters.
A little bit.
Yeah, usually it's depending on what the storyline is, but for Marvel, it's usually pretty cut and dry, good guy, bad guy, and you go from there. This one, Legion was portrayed as who is Legion and what side is really using him for the right reasons and trying to help him instead of use him as a weapon, and it goes back and forth. So, I mean, season 1 was just phenomenal, and like we say, visually stunning. That you just are sitting there just in awe of just what's going on and the different characters that you're seeing come through back and forth. I mean, Sid, who is played by Rachel Keller, she was, his Legion's partner, and, obviously became love interest, and just the dynamic going on between both of those two characters was really, something you haven't seen on TV in a while.
No, and especially right from the get-go, where like he sees her and like, oh my gosh, like she's beautiful, and goes in for the kiss, and then her powers get revealed. Yeah,
which at the time you're kind of thinking, was she supposed to be Rogue?
Yeah, that was what we thought, because he kissed her, she kissed him, whatever it was, I forget, it's been a couple of years. But then he just passes out, and you're like, wait a minute, I haven't seen anything like this since Rogue in the movies.
Yeah, so at this stage, it's just a very weird dynamic that you're seeing, just kind of how you're tying into just a young adult who's trying to find his way in the world, and just kind of dealing with the emotions that come with that. But meanwhile, at the same time, you're seeing that you're finding of how much damaged he is from his childhood growing up, and the character with yellow eyes walking around, and then the one that you thought was supposed to be the real memory wasn't, and it's just how well it was played out. I mean, season 1 was just one of those shows that really snuck up on you and really took care of you. So by season 2, we had our villain finally established, and Navid Nehaban, who played Amal Farouk, as the Shadow King, by far and away the star of the show.
Yeah.
I will say this. Dan Stevens, nothing against him, nothing against Aubrey Plaza, nothing against anybody else on the show. But Navid, his portrayal of Amal Farouk just stole the series.
Yeah.
And just, was one of those characters you couldn't take your eyes off of, and just embraced the role, and just really, I want to say almost made the show about him, per se.
A little bit.
Just how good it was played out, because then you start delving into what Legion is trying to do, and just how the agency is trying to come up as a weapon against the Shadow King, and just how it plays out. And by the time you get the payoff for season 2, I know we're kind of jumping really into things. It's such a left field turn.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, at the end of it, it seems that the Shadow King has now possessed everybody in the department that has been trying to work with Legion to prevent him from taking over.
It's one of those bleep moments that you're like, oh no, this isn't happening, is it?
Right, because at this point you see that Legion has finally emerged as the antagonist of the show.
Yep.
And just how much he unwillingly or unknowingly has just caused a lot of damage to everybody on that team just with his actions and and it almost feels like mind control. It's just such an interesting dynamic that he goes from season 1 to season 2. Dan Stevens, like I said, just really sinks his teeth into this and really demonstrates just of how damaged Legion is. And when it gets finally in that payoff moment in season 2, you're like, oh wait, what are they going to do for season 3?
Yeah.
So now we finally fast forward to season 3, and this is where it was getting announced that they were going to introduce Charles Xavier.
Which was a big bombshell because, well, the last time we'd seen Charles Xavier in anything motion picture-wise, be it TV or film, of note was X-Men Apocalypse?
At that time, yeah.
At that time, Patrick Stewart had announced he was done playing the role from during Logan, so it was kind of a question of, all right, who are you going to have do it? Are you going to have somehow talk Patrick Stewart into doing it? Or are you going to get James McAvoy to come do it? Like, what are you going to do?
No, because at this point, it had really not been connected to the X-Men universe. I mean,
right.
The only connection they had was a foreshadowing of a picture of the wheelchair Charles Xavier was in,
right.
And you saw the X in the wheel. So at that point, you're like, okay, maybe they're going to tie into it. And I know at one point they were really trying to add Bishop to the show, which that would have been something if they could pull that character out.
Yeah.
But overall, it went to Legion just kind of emerging and dabbling in time travel this season.
Which is always messy.
It's always messy. And I understand that it was something different. I mean, they introduced the character Switch and just how the connection, they were revealing the history between Charles Xavier and Legion and how it ties into the Shadow King. So when we get to the final finale, as we just saw this past Monday, Pad, what did you think?
I was really confused because I had to watch it a couple times and even look up a couple explanations of what the heck happened.
Yeah, which is truly what Legion is, because trying to describe it is going to be tough.
You're gonna need a chart, a flow chart, and eraser.
Yes, because after the season 2 finale, season 3 is kind of a little more trippy. And
that's possible.
I know, I was going to say, that's almost impossible to say. And as you see the progression, you're going through the history of Professor X and where he meets up with David's mother and just how it ties into time travel. And then, as always, anything with time travel, it always gets messy. And then it winds up that part of Legion's... do we call them a team at this stage?
Maybe.
Because as it jumps in, you see Sid teaming with Carrie and Carrie Loudermilk, who played by Bill Irwin, and Amber Midthunder, who, I mean, they played a great role on the show. I mean, they're playing split characters. One was a scientist, the other was a warrior, and you see them merge in and out, and just they're sitting there just defending David's mother during this from obviously what's going on with the Time Bureau. Like, it's just kind of a weird scenario too. And at this stage, you have the final showdown getting built where Legion finally meets his dad.
Yep.
And they meet two versions of the Shadow King.
Which is, the Shadow King's already not a good thing. Like, the Shadow King shows up in certain instances, you're like, ah, crap, this isn't good. Like, if you're a character in that story, you're like, ah, crap, this isn't good. Then you're staring 2 in the face, and you're like, oh, God, I'm not making it out of this, am I?
No, this is one of those you're like, okay, what is going on? But one thing I will say, though, is when they started delving into what can only be described as an astral plane battle, which anything from the comics, that's where they go into the mental realm and it's out of body, and ties in with Shadow King, ties in with Xavier, ties in with Legion. How they did this was very interesting because you see that as Charles and David are talking over their battle plan, you see David form a mace of mental energy, and you see Charles just form a bullet, which he loads into a gun, and they know what they have to do. And as they kind of get paired off, you see David fight the younger Farouk, and you see Charles meet with the older one.
It was almost like watching, a couple corps from from like the Green Lantern Corps or the Yellow Lantern Corps, like in the DC universe, fighting off against each other, because it's like, oh, it's not just our bare strength, it's not just like our brute strength, it's our mental abilities.
Right. So at this point, you're seeing 2 battles go on until it finally breaks down between Xavier and the older Shadow King, that they almost come to like a truce out of nowhere.
Which is odd.
It was odd, but they kind of come to an understanding of each other, which is weird to say, But it also now has caused a time ripple effect because the Shadow King eventually meets up with his younger version, which he saves from Legion killing.
Yeah.
Because Legion at this point has become so powerful. He almost kills him until he's pulled off, and they explain, Charles does, and they have this weird like father-son moment where Xavier like has a talk with him and kind of apologizes for everything and says everything will be okay now. And it's a weird scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and I'm not saying bad, I'm not saying good, I'm just saying it's odd.
It felt off pace.
It kind of did, but it was kind of one of those that you're expecting the big battle and it doesn't happen. And I mean, maybe we're just so used to it from superhero shows that when it doesn't happen and it's kind of really left out there, that the ending I thought kind of left it open-ended. I mean, I know the series has ended.
Yeah.
But it almost leaves it open-ended because you almost fall back to your problem from season 1. What is real and what is fake?
Yeah.
Because I can't see Xavier coming to a, we know you exist, you know we exist, we're just going to stay on our sides of the fence and never run into each other.
Right.
I just don't buy that.
Usually no, but it is Xavier. He has done odd things in the past.
Right. But
especially in current run comics.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get to a little bit later in the show. Oh, trust us on that one. But at this stage, you see there come to the peace and understanding, and you see that the timeline is almost now reset. And it basically is because the Shadow King is going to leave Legion alone from the get. So when this is all happening, and albeit though, I didn't even want to touch upon it, but I have to mention, I know they did a lot with music this season, but, but the whole Pink Floyd scene with Mother was different.
Yeah.
And it just kind of tied into the episode. It's like, okay, what is really real and what is not? And then he's going through his mental stages to now where he knows the timeline is getting reset. So it was almost like the series was all for nothing.
We'll say Fox's ace in the hole. Reset the timeline.
Yeah, which, I mean, obviously at this stage, a lot's going on. And no, it does not have anything to do with Marvel being or acquiring Fox.
No.
Want to very stress it. From the get-go, Hawley had said that he wanted the show to go 3 seasons. So this was the beginning, middle, and end.
Yep.
But overall, the episode was odd. I mean, it was a good episode, but very odd.
Yeah.
Even for Legion standards.
Yeah.
So, Pat, let me ask you this. We've now wrapped up the series. What do you think Legion's legacy is?
Man, I don't know. Just because throughout the whole show, as much as I watched it, and as much as I enjoyed it and didn't enjoy parts of it, I could never really get my firm grasp on what was going on. So it's hard to say what kind of impact it is because it's almost a story outside of existence where to me it feels odd that you have a story set in the X-Men universe and to some degree somebody from the X-Men team or that side of things outside of young Charles Xavier, because to me that young Charles Xavier has nothing to do with James McAvoy or Patrick Stewart. To me it just feels odd to do a series set in that universe and then not even loosely tied to it. It almost feels like an alternate timeline story.
It kind of had that vibe to it. I mean, I know at the time The Gifted was out on Fox.
Right.
And nobody really knew. I mean, obviously, I don't think that was connected, but nobody knew if they were going to try doing a crossover.
They alluded to it, but like they never firmly said it. Like you heard hints of something happened to the X-Men, but you never got a firm answer.
Yeah, it was kind of teased, but it was never like officially confirmed. I mean, everybody was under the same roof, so to speak, they could have crossed over. I mean, kind of like how Cloak and Dagger is now going to do with Runaways.
Yeah.
But Legion, for me, is going to have its legacy of taking a character who was very complex and one that I didn't think was going to work as a show. I genuinely didn't. And made it into a very thought-provoking show because you had to question a lot what was going on and what personalities and dealing with mental health and somebody that has that much power. I mean, we always talk about Ben Parker's famous philosophy, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, what if somebody's not mentally able to handle that?
Yeah.
That became the motive of the show. And as you see with other factors tying in, the Shadow King and his possession and then ultimate, revealed to be the villain or hero, depending on what side of the fence you want on, it really became something to set a benchmark on of not every superhero show involving Marvel or DC per se needs to be so cookie cutter of good guy versus bad guy. Bad guy's base, is a typical in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Anything like that. There was one that just really kind of pushed the boundaries of just what happens when somebody has all this power and can't handle the responsibility due to situations outside their control. And I thought when they tied it in with season 3, it was a definite different direction.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't gravitate towards it as much, just because I thought, in my opinion, like the Charles Xavier tie-in, while it did matter, it just didn't have the same impact like when we tied in with the Shadow King and going from there.
To me, it almost felt a little forced.
It kind of did, but obviously knowing the character's background, you needed to say it,
right?
And this is one of those situations where it needed to get explained a little more in detail and just tie in, I guess, a little more to the X universe, like to just reset everything.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't, and it kind of says to me like, okay, we had a great idea to carry forward, but if we're just going to reset, we've left it open ended. If we want to come back to do it again, we can.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with it, but then again, where do you go from here?
Right.
Because you're going to have Legion in the X universe now? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think Disney's going to go near him.
No,
I don't, unfortunately.
I think that falls under the category of too powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right. And you definitely... I don't know where that would fall into, because especially with now the new phase coming out, and I'm fully convinced Eternals is going to be what segues into Mutants.
Well, it starts off the Mutants aspect of it.
Yeah, that's the only claim to fame that's going to have. So
like you're not going to get. Let's get one thing out of the way. We both think that the X-Men in some form or mutants in some form are going to come out of or be a result of the Eternals. We don't think for one instance that there's going to be an end credit scene of a certain mansion in Westchester, New York, with a bald-headed man in a wheelchair saying, "Oh, it's time, my students." Like, no, that's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. You're going to hear Mutants before you hear X-Men.
Yeah.
And we've already established that. But for Legion overall, though, it did show that if a network wants to take a shot on a character, as long as the story is good and the actors can really make something of the material, it has a place on TV, or it has a place in media for it. Mm-hmm. And I think Legion does. I mean, Legion definitely was a different show than anything we'd seen on TV, or at least involving the superhero genre.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say about your different indie comics that have appeared on screen or film, but either way, it doesn't matter, because Legion really stood out in its own corner and made its own mark. Because, like I said, the visuals on the show were truly embracing the character's just frantic mental state, because it was just so visually impressive that you just had no idea really what was going on. I mean, for me, that's what really sticks out. I mean, and along with the great acting. And just like I said, some of the parts, though, really kind of hit or miss. I know when they went with a lot of the humor and the musical tone, a lot of it hit, some of it didn't. But there's nothing to do. And like I said, I mean, the series finale kind of anticlimactic, and I kind of thought Xavier was too this season. But it at least opened the door to say we can take a property like Legion, who doesn't have a fan base, and as long as your creators and actors really run with it and make something of it, there is an audience for it. And I think now, especially with everything phasing over to Disney Plus and Hulu and whatever is going to be the future of, I want to say, more mature heroes or characters involving comics, Legion has shown that there is an audience and there is some place you can watch it. You're just going to have to watch it a couple times, because it is going to mess you up. Mm-hmm. But definitely hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What was your thoughts on Legion? Have you watched the show? Did you really like it? Did you really not like it? We want to know. Let's have a discussion about it, shall we? Hit us up on the social media. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
Coming back for segment number 2 on this edition of the ODPH, and we have to talk some comics.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And we have to talk about a very big comic that came out last week.
Yeah, was it that big, though?
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, even our friends on Twitter, shout out to I Understood That Reference, and shout out to Two Man Comic Book Club. We've been having discussions about this online. Mm-hmm. The issue is House of X number 2.
Oh, boy.
If you are not familiar, we are going to be talking spoilers. This new run of the X-Men universe is really hit the ground running. And
sprinting, more like.
Sprinting, because when it was announced Jonathan Hickman was taking over the X-Men line, A lot of hype behind it, and obviously rightfully so. Hickman is an incredible writer. He does very long, drawn-out plots. He does slow-burn dramas. Easiest way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been hyping that there was an event that was going to change the face of the Marvel Universe forever, the biggest moment in X-Men history.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd all been waiting and go, okay, what are they going to try doing?
Well, and there was even a moment on Twitter where he said that like he one of his editors or something had read like the first couple issues, and even they weren't prepared for what they were reading.
Nobody was prepared. Nobody. Because when he dropped this bombshell on everybody, and that's the only way you can describe it, it went, whoa. Like on everybody we've talked to online, at the comic shops, wherever we bumped into anybody, and House of X has come up in discussion, everybody went, yeah, what did you think of that?
Yeah.
And rightfully so. So we are going to start delving into the issue, breaking it down in 3, 2, 1. Pat, I mean, what did you think of the issue?
It was a wild read, and I could not believe the twist they introduced into it.
I could not believe it either, which they decided to reveal early, which this was kind of a surprise to me. Like, if there was anything that was more of a shock than the actual surprise,
right?
It was they revealed it this early.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that reveal, you ask? It is the truth behind Dr. Moira McTaggart, longtime X-Men ally.
Like the one, the little cliffhanger scene we had in last week in Powers of X, where we go, oh, I wonder when we're going to find that out, and we figured it'd be a couple weeks or maybe towards the end of the series. Nope, next week.
No, we got right into it, which it definitely answered a lot of questions, but raised some more.
I'll say it answered like one question and raised maybe about 2,000 more.
Because it ties into the scene where a young Xavier meets a young Moira, and Moira says, read my mind. And she kind of says, what is a dream if it's real?
Right, because Xavier has this moment of like, almost like deja vu, like, I feel like I know you from someplace.
Mm-hmm. And she starts naming details and then says, read my mind. And you see the look of just sheer like,
what the heck?
Wonderment and terror almost of Xavier. And then we get to this issue where we start breaking down the history of Moira McTaggart, who had been long time just rumored to be a human.
Yep.
And what happened, Pat?
She's a mutant.
She is a very important mutant.
Yeah.
Whose power is reincarnating her life over and over again.
And not as somebody different, but as herself.
Right. And she retains the memories of the past life.
Yeah.
Which, to see this happen, I had to literally put the book down and go like, what did I just read? Wait, time out.
Yeah.
Because long-standing ally, and you'd wonder why she'd been helping the X-Men out, and then it ties into the characters there. Now you understand, which, I mean, it's a different motivation. You kind of almost want to say, why didn't this happen sooner? But hey, sidetrack. We don't need to get into that. But as we start delving into the history, she starts replaying how she grew up with her memories and the first time that she grew. And she died of old age at like age, what, 72?
72, 80 something. Yeah, no, old age.
Yeah, just regular old age. So nothing super crazy.
Grew up, went to school, got married, had kids, was happy.
Yeah.
Or so it seemed.
Or so it seemed. And then we fast forward back to her life. And then she's growing up in that age, but she remembers that all of her past memories. So she's trying to get in touch with Charles Xavier.
And I think the thing we need to point out is, yeah, she's reincarnated. She retains her memories. This isn't a scenario where, like, she retains her memories but doesn't trigger them until a certain age. No, she sets out in a little bit further in the episode that she is fully aware and has all of her memories when she is in the womb.
Yes, which is a wild power.
It was a little uncomfortable.
It was a little uncomfortable, but I was like, okay, this is very different. Something we had seen before, which I completely love because I want to be surprised when I read comics.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start going through, this is when she's living her lives. And as she's going through the second life, she's trying to get in touch with Charles Xavier, but dies in a plane crash.
Right.
So life 2 is gone. So we go to life 3. Living life yet again, has those memories, and then winds up trying to make a mutant cure. And then at this point, she runs into some old friends of the X-Men, Mystique and Destiny.
Right.
Which at this point, Destiny is explaining, you have 10 lives. Maybe 11, depending on how you play that last one.
Well, and at this point, Moira thinks, oh, I'm the only one who knows what's going on. Nobody else is aware of what I can do, and I'm going to get away with this scot-free. And Destiny goes, I'm I know.
No, Destiny can see everything.
Destiny's fully aware.
Yes, and she's basically saying use your powers to help mutants. Otherwise, I will make it my mission to hunt you down and kill you.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that you don't live that long.
Yeah.
And she has Pyro kill her at this stage.
And it's one of the more gruesome panels in the comic where she goes, kill her slowly so that she remembers what this death is like.
Right. So at this point, this now changes her direction as a character. And then she starts meeting her next life. She starts working with the X-Men. And this is when she starts falling in love with Xavier and then tries to steer him in the direction of stopping the Sentinels. And it almost seems like the Sentinels cannot be stopped. Like that's where her major focus is.
Yeah.
Which does make sense if you think about how Powers is played out. And I know we're flipping books. But with Nimrod being the major villain,
right,
it's almost like her mission is to stop the Sentinels.
It almost feels like one of those things you see in time travel or like altering history stories where like you're trying to prevent something, but every time you try to prevent it and you come up with a new way to prevent it, it comes at you, but from a different angle and from something you weren't quite expecting.
Right. So at this stage, it's just where is Moira going from here? Because lives 4 and 5, if we're recapping, almost end the same way.
Yeah.
That it winds up Sentinels are involved, and Live 5, I believe, was when she talked Xavier into building a safe haven for mutants.
Yeah.
And the Sentinels still came there.
Yep.
But what I thought was interesting, and I know this is going to play a factor down the road, I just don't know how. Mm-hmm. We don't know nothing about Live 6.
That's true.
Live 6 was skipped.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I might be looking.
Is it left out of the little timeline circle thing they did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is left out. And they don't really touch upon it, which I know that they're going to have to at some point.
Right.
You would think.
Right. And if you pick up this issue and you're at all confused about what's going on and what life it is, there's a handy little, I almost want to call it like a history timeline thing they do towards the end of the book where it kind of takes all of her lives that they show. Obviously, the 6th one is skipped. And it kind of like details the major events, where it starts and goes up to, and then it hits the circle, and then you get to the end point where she dies. Although the interesting thing I think with a couple of them is that how the line, like a couple of them, the line just hard stops. Like the first one is, year 74, Moira dies of congestive heart failure, her first life. Another one, it's, she dies in a sentinel attack, and then she dies after, discovering the master mold facility. But then there's a couple of them where it's like, okay, she dies, but then it's not a hard stop. It keeps going.
Right. So this is a very interesting tale that they're weaving.
Yeah.
Because you would think that now, okay, she has all this knowledge about what's going on, and it's still not working. Like when she comes back for live number 7, she starts working with Magneto. Mm-hmm. And obviously Magneto, I think, is very well aware if somebody's telling him, hey, the mutant race is in trouble. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to be the one to step up and do this because Xavier can't.
He's a man who needs very little motivation.
Right. When it comes to saving mutants, yeah, that is him to the letter. And it takes a combined front from the X-Men, Avengers, and Fantastic Four to stop him.
Which is wild.
So like put that in mental perspective.
Can I have that in a movie?
Which you basically did. I mean, that's essentially the Infinity Gauntlet, just without stones.
True.
I mean, Magneto to be that far from doing it,
yeah.
I mean, that just goes to show like how far he must have came in that life to do it.
Right.
And then for the next life, that's when she starts pairing up with Apocalypse.
Yeah. Which,
that's a weird pairing.
Talk about jumping from one extreme to the other.
Right. And then what I thought was the craziest aspect of this one, though, Apocalypse gets taken out by Nimrod.
Yeah.
Which just did not register with me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess because I think Apocalypse is stronger than Nimrod.
Yeah, it's arguable.
But Nimrod, I mean, is the highest evolution of Sentinel technology there is.
Right.
So when he defeats Apocalypse, that is really elevating his stock.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So now we get to the 10th life, which is where she now runs into Xavier and lets him read her mind. Mm-hmm. So this is now the most important scene in X-Men history, quote unquote.
Yep.
Pad, what is the impact of this moving forward?
Well, it's got huge. It's almost, they talk about dropping a stone into the pond and watching the ripple effects. This is more taking a boulder and chucking it into a pond because, the implications of this one.
Yeah, this is where just to go from here is absolutely crazy because she's still, giving birth to Proteus, who's another Omega level. She's still doing the normal activities.
Yeah.
But this almost resets the complete X-Men timeline, which can be good and can be bad.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how this is going to play out. Like, I am very intrigued by this.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the books that are coming out that are very eclectic in their mix. Like, I think the only one that's really jumping out at me right now is X-Men.
Right.
And Excalibur.
Right.
But Excalibur kind of reminds me of Justice League Odyssey.
Yeah.
Because you're putting a major level villain on that team. But as we see now, the timeline is rewritten. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, to say the least. And now you can maybe understand if that really is Xavier underneath the helmet. Then now, after seeing this information, this now changes how he is moving forward with the X-Men and where they're going to go from here. I mean, this is literally anybody's guess because he now knows that the future and I guess his dream is only that of a dream.
Right.
So how this is going to play out going forward is anybody's guess. Because the one thing in this issue, too, they do have a middle panel gatefold artwork, and they say for issue 4, Xavier's dream turns deadly for House of X.
Right.
And then they say for Powers of X, Cerebro fulfills its true purpose.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking at the Marvel.com preview for Powers of X #2, which comes out today as we're recording. And on the cover, it has Sabretooth, Magneto, Mystique, Toad, and Emma Frost in a garden-type environment. And it says, the preview says, quote, as Xavier sows the seeds of the past, the X-Men's future blossoms into trouble for all mutantdom.
And that's an interesting tagline. Because whatever Xavier is doing, and at this stage, it's anybody, like, is affected by this. It's just nobody can really kind of figure out his true motivations. But everything he's doing is just, is it working? Is it not? And he's almost doing it that he's unifying every mutant on the planet, which is great.
Right.
But how this is coming into effect for moving forward with history. This is just absolutely wild to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And at the end of this timeline, as it was revealed with Destiny, if Moira has played her cards right, and this is the ultimate ace in the hole, like, this is the last straw, so to speak, for her.
Right.
If she survives this, does this kick off Dawn of X?
Maybe.
You almost have to think it does. And I just don't know how it resets, because if she dies one more time, that's it. But for a game-changing level event, House of X #2 delivers on it.
Right.
And I mean, we're already just this far into the story. This is barely starting, and yet look at where we are.
Yeah.
This is absolutely game-changing on every level. Not only the X-Men comics, but if they're going to tie this into the past, like, I'm just not sure where this generates moving forward. This is one thing about time travel in comics. It kind of gets a little messy, because then what do you retcon the past and say Xavier's been... Like, I mean, it's just one of those scenarios that when this moment happens, do we just fast forward to now and we just leave that in the timeline alone?
Right.
And Marvel is usually pretty good with their timelines.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have alternate realities, and you'll see that from time to time, but there's always the 616 universe that is the stat quo. So going forward with this, this is going to be an interesting play on how this ends for House of X.
Yeah.
Because House of X is the current timeline.
Right.
And then Powers of X is kind of where it's jumping around, and you're seeing the different years.
It's kind of filling in the blank gaps.
So I guess one question that's coming to mind is, what if Moira is wrong?
That very well could be.
Could you imagine if these were all fake memories?
Oh, Lord.
I'm just going to throw that conspiracy theory out there. That, let's say, somebody from the Sentinels got to her.
Could be.
From the one of the Trask family, because at one point she's hunting them down too.
Yeah.
And until she's taken out, because she can't stop, like, not even doing that, stopping the Sentinels too. This is just one of the most well thought out stories in comics history in a long time, especially for Marvel. Marvel always has good stories, and this one, I mean, Hickman is going long term with this, and just the ramifications, just a small effect. The ripples moving forward are going to be out of control. And especially if they play out right, because you're riding a lot on Xavier now knowing this knowledge and just evolving his own dream.
Yeah.
How trippy is that to say? But definitely a great issue to pick up. And if you want to just read it for yourself, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Head down to your local comic shops, give them some support, pick up some issues, especially pick up House of X #2. Hit us up on that hashtag, though, will you? Hashtag ODPH. Join in the conversation on social media. We definitely want to interact with you. What was your thoughts about House of X and the restart of the X-Men franchise for Marvel Comics right now? We definitely are interested. So let us know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is George Gatton, and you are listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour Entertainment Edition.
Hello there. Do you like movies but feel overwhelmed by the avalanche of titles available every week in the theaters and on streaming services? Do you struggle with justifying the increasing cost of movies at the theater or whether to pick up another streaming service? Well, I have a resource for you, One Movie Punch. Your movie review podcast for currently playing, newly streaming classic and cult movies, one movie per day, every day. We track the theaters, streaming services, and the occasional physical release to find the best movies currently available. We watch every film, then distill it into a short 3 to 5 minute review and publish a daily podcast. And now with year 2, we've gone spoiler-free for all movies within the last 3 years and bringing on a team of reviewers with brand new perspectives and selections. Want more information? Head over to www.onemoviepunch.com to subscribe to the daily podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at OneMoviePunch and Facebook at www.facebook.com/OneMoviePunch. We'll see you there.
Coming back for another segment on this edition of the ODPH. Pad, you got some movie Marvel news to talk about?
Yeah, some Marvel news, some Disney news. Got some interesting things as that happened over the last week. First thing off, and this is probably the easiest one to get to, and it's probably the shortest one we'll get to because the next one is, it's a long one. The first one is, of course, there's been a long rumored, kind of hinted at Doctor Doom movie from Noah Hawley, who we talked about last segment.
Legion
writer. Now that Legion is over, he's kind of doing some talking about the film, and he did some interviews where he basically came up with a script or an idea for a Doctor Doom movie. He wrote for Fox, and that led some people to think, maybe that'll happen at a Marvel now that Marvel has control of Fox. According to Hawley, he has revealed that the movie is, quote, done, and it's not going to happen. In an interview with Deadline, he said, quote, "I mean, where it stands is now that the movie is done and Legion is done, and I've taken a little time off because someone told me that there was this word vacation, which means you don't work, which sounded really interesting to me. But I need to circle back to them and announce that I would love to make it and figure out if that's something that is possible. Whether or not they already have a plan in place for what to do with those characters or whether they're open to my kind of vision for what to do with those characters. But it's sort of on me right now to go push them, which I will do as soon as I come up for air." So it sounds like it's not happening, could be happening, but for right now, it's not happening.
I think for them to let him do that movie would be a good look.
I think it depends on what the movie entails, because, we know Fox's history with those characters, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, it's not good.
But correct me if I'm wrong, hashtag ODPH. If I'm not mistaken, the plot for that was there was a reporter that was going over to Latveria and interviewing him, and he was telling his story through his eyes.
That could work now.
And something like it was in that vein.
Right.
So if it's that idea, I'm completely for it. I think that'd be a fresh take. I mean, I can't remember anything like that being in the MCU.
Yeah. Moving on, we got some Disney news. They had a earnings conference call last week for their third quarter, and they confirmed that the big changes are coming to the Fox film division, including word that the Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige is getting the Fox comic book heroes like the X-Men and Fantastic Four. Shocking none of us. We've heard this before, and it's not exactly new to anything else. The interesting thing that did come out of this is that they are axing basically 85 to 90% of what Fox was working on, because as the Fox Studios, not Disney, but Fox Studios posted a $170 million operating loss in the third quarter, or excuse me, that is Disney. They operated a posting loss of $170 million for Fox. In the same time last year, Fox made like $180 million in income. Disney pinned this on the performance of Dark Phoenix, where the film only grossed $65 million domestically and had a budget of $200 million. Overseas, it was a little kinder because it made $186 million overseas. They also attributed losses to marketing costs for upcoming films like Ford v Ferrari, which is the only film Iger singled out from the inherited Fox release calendar. He said, quote, "One of the biggest issues was the Fox studio performance, which was well below where it had been and well below where we hoped it would be when we made the acquisition." So that was kind of like leading some questions and led us to a list. Somebody dug up and found a list of everything is either we're not sure of yet, or is safe, or is canned. So we'll run through that list. Okay. These films are in pre-production, so they could happen. They may not happen. Time will have to wait and see.
It's a 50-50.
It's a 50-50.
Okay.
Avatar 4 and 5. Now that would be the fourth and fifth sequels to James Cameron's Avatar film. I would put that as 50-50 because that to me would kind of go based off of how Avatar 2 and 3 do.
All right, am I the only one that's not excited about Avatar coming back?
No, I'm not, because to me, it was the highest grossing film of all time for 10 years, but that was due in large part to word of mouth and how much it was hyped by those who went to see it just for the
It's cool for 3D, but other than
it's
that,
cool for 3D.
I've seen that story before.
Right, I mean, the story is Pocahontas in space. It's Fern Gully in space. Take your pick. I didn't go for the plot, and I heard people recommend it to me. Listen, don't go for the plot. Go for the visuals. And the visuals, I saw it in 3D. The visuals were stunning. When you got to the floating mountain scene, seeing that in 3D was incredible.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you. I own a DVD copy where it's the original version, the extended version, and then the director's cut, which adds like 15 or 20 minutes onto the thing. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched it once since like 2010.
Yeah, like I've
had no urge to.
I understand they're trying to make something of it, but for me, I have no desire to go see it.
Yeah. So also we have Fear Street 2 and 3. These are movies based off of R.L. Stine books.
Okay.
They are in process of working on a Fear Street 1, so I would say that kind of also depends on how Fear Street 1 goes. Death on the Nile. This is a sequel to Murder on the Orient Express, which came out a few years ago.
Okay.
Bob's Burger movie. Garfield, a reboot of the cartoon. And then Z, which is a reboot of the Zorro films. So those are all the movies that are currently listed as in pre-production, so nobody's really quite sure yet. They may can them, they may go through with them.
Okay.
The following ones I'm going to read are in production in some form. Either they're filming, post-production, whatever. These are safe. Ad Astra, The King's Man, Terminator Dark Fate, The New Mutants, which we'll get to that one in a minute.
Yeah.
Oof. Fear Street, which I mentioned, and then Avatar 2 and 3. Now we have the canceled films. There are about 276 in total, so there's a lot, but I won't go through all 276.
I was going to say you got to pick and choose from that list.
I'm going to go through just kind of the ones that jumped out to me and really stuck out to me. Assassin's Creed 2, of course, would have been the sequel to the Michael Fassbender film from a couple of years ago. Wasn't really all that good, having played the games. Chronicle 2, a sequel to the 2012 film, which I didn't really think that needed a sequel. I don't remember a lot of people asking for one.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah.
Interesting.
You've got Flash Gordon, which a reboot that was going to be directed by Taika Waititi. This was the one that we talked about a couple weeks ago, where it was announced he was going to work on it and it was going to happen, and then the Thor thing happened and that put it on the back burner. But no, now it's officially canned and dead in the water. Hitman 2. The site I was reading wasn't quite sure if it was a sequel or a reboot. There was a Hitman movie that came out a couple of years ago, but
it really went under the radar.
And nobody's really quite sure. Magic the Gathering, based off the card game, got canceled. McClane, which was supposed to be an origin story for John McClane, got canceled. Mega Man, of course, based off of the video game, was canceled. Play-Doh, a movie based on the toy of the same name.
All right, I don't even want to ask. Okay, I'm happy. Good, cancel it.
This kind of strikes me because I remember when the movie Battleship came out, of course, based off of the board game. I was like, how are you going to make a movie out of that? No, this even more so. But thankfully, I don't have to think that hard. The Argonauts, of course, based off of the Greek tale, Jason and the Argonauts, was canceled. The Heat 2, which was going to be a sequel to the 2013 film. They were going to do a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen reboot, but that was canceled. They were going to do an animated film based off of the Pink Panther, not the Inspector that you've seen a couple of times, but no, an animated film with the actual Pink Panther cartoon.
Okay.
Which I liked that cartoon when I was growing up. I would have been all for that, but hey.
Not the end of the world with that one.
Not the end of the game. Then you have The Sims movie was canceled, of course, based off of the video game of the same name. I'm not sure how they would have made that one work, because if you've ever played The Sims before, it's basically a life simulator where the characters talk in like their own language and you can't understand them. You have to make out what they're saying based off of the little bubbles that come over their head, and it's like emojis essentially.
I think it's past its time in my opinion.
Yeah. Then you've got The Three Misfortunes of Geppetto, which was going to be a prequel to Pinocchio.
What?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really quite sure what they were going to do with that one. Thank God it got canceled. Toymageddon, which was going to be a reboot of the Small Soldiers film from the 90s. Thank God they canned that one. I loved the Toy Soldiers movie when that came out back when I was a kid.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, just leave that one alone.
You watch it now, it's a little hokey, but like you remember when it came out and just the time period, it was really crazy. And then lastly, you have an untitled Sandlot prequel has been canceled. So
why do you need a prequel?
I have no idea.
All right, so I'm pretty like on board with everything that got canceled. No offense to anybody that's involved with it, but like seriously, like Sandlot prequel and like what 3 stages of Geppetto?
Yeah. So then you go to an article from Variety. Of course, it mentioned the sequels to Avatar will proceed, as well as a continuation of the Planet of the Apes series. Although no new film in that series has been announced since the release of 2017's War for the Planet of the Apes.
Is Matt Reeves involved with that? Do we know?
It doesn't. The article from Variety doesn't say. It just says they're going to continue the series, even though it looked like it was an end to the series.
If Reeves is not involved with it, I don't care.
Yeah. Iger also said that the indie label Fox Searchlight will continue on its current trajectory and also make movies for Disney Plus. And then he said overall Fox's film divisions will pare back the total number of releases. He said, quote, "It will probably take a solid year, maybe 2 years, before we can have an impact on the films in production. We're all confident we're going to turn around the results of Fox live action," Iger said. And then it says under Disney, Fox has films dated through the end of 2020, including Steven Spielberg's take on the West Side Story, the Amy Adams thriller Woman in the Window, and Brad Pitt's astronaut drama Ad Astra, which I mentioned. Now to New Mutants.
Yeah.
Oof. Now, this was the one that, when was this first announced? 2017?
Oh, God, yeah.
2017 something. And this was one that you can go back. It was one of the early Entertainment Edition episodes we did, where we had Mike C. from Horror Zone 607 talk about it, where we were all genuinely excited for this because, you know, it was almost like a kick in the pants, shot in the arm for comic book movies, where it's not the same thing you would expect from a comic book movie, because it was going to be a horror. It was appearing to be a horror comic movie. But then it got delayed, and it got delayed again, and then it started doing some test screenings, and it really didn't test well. So they put it into, it needed some reshoots, and the last we had heard was when Game of Thrones was getting ready to premiere, and of course, Maisie Williams plays Arya in Game of Thrones is supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah, she's playing Wolfsbane.
She's playing Wolfsbane in the movie. You know, of course, this was, with all the news that had been going on and the delays and whatnot, this was like the press's first opportunity to ask her, hey, what's going on with New Mutants? And we said then, I know we said it on a previous episode, it wasn't a good look, and it's not a good look when one of your star actors and one of your biggest actresses in the film goes, I have no idea what's going on with the movie.
Yeah, this one, for whatever reason, is just...
It's cursed.
It's cursed.
It's almost like, what is it, the Legend of Don Quixote?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, that like they've been trying to make it for 15 years, and it's never been able to come out.
Yeah, because when this was originally announced, I mean, it was going to be a fresh take. I think that was the one thing.
It even had a trailer come out.
Yeah, the trailer came out. It was like covering Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, and it looked good. Like the trailer looked really good. I'm like, okay, there might be some potential with this because they were going to do. And all right, so spoiler, because this movie probably will never see the light of day. It was supposed to be the Demon Bear saga. So if you've read the New Mutants, you know what that story is.
Yeah.
And it kind of tinges on the horror element and where they're going to go with it, especially. Yeah. For the X-Men franchise and superhero comic, you don't see those movies. I mean, not everything needs to be a Disney cookie cutter,
right? In
my opinion. And this was going to be something different, and just for whatever reason, I don't know what they're expecting from this.
Right. And so the thing that came out of a Variety article is, they mentioned that the Dark Phoenix numbers were dismal, it contributed to a $170 million write-down, so the kind of thing that came out was that, quote, Disney is optimistic that handing Fox superhero properties such as Fantastic Four and X-Men to Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige will improve the quality of these movies, but bumps must be smoothed over in that transition. The studio is unimpressed with New Mutants, an X-Men spinoff with a haunted house vibe, and believes it has limited box office potential.
Okay, so initial thoughts of that, because this is the first time I'm hearing this.
So initial thoughts for me are from that says, limited box office potential. It sounds like they're still exploring putting it out in theaters, contrary to all the reports that they would just dump it on a streaming service.
They are the studios behind Avengers Endgame, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They own the rights to Star Wars Episode 9.
Yep.
You're really worried about making money? Like,
I think the thing of it is, though, is you just had this mega X-Men movie, $200 million budget or whatever it was, and it barely made its money over back.
and I grant you,
And that's the benchmark for Hollywood. It's not, what's the fans think, what's this think, what's the reception. It's did it make its money back?
which I understand from a business point. My point is the fan perspective, and just going, if you have you're arguably on track for like the biggest year in films, if I'm not mistaken.
No, yeah, I think they already have had the biggest year for a studio.
Right. That even if this does crash and burn, hypothetically, let's say it tanks worse than Dark Phoenix, it's not going to slow you down to the point where you're going to be in dire straits.
I mean, the thing of it is, though, is that, Disney had Aladdin come out, and which made $1 billion. They had Lion King, which came out and made $1 billion. They had Avengers Endgame, which made $2 billion. And yet they still had $170 million loss because of all the stuff they took on from Fox that ended up tanking them.
Right, which...
And if I'm not mistaken, it ended up leading to their stock slipping a little bit after the earnings call.
Right, but they're going to make it tenfold and back once they get Fantastic Four and X-Men rolling. I mean,
Right.
I guess where I'm looking at it going, okay, you have this movie, it's sitting wherever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel like it's going to make money at the box office. Here's a quick and easy remedy for this. You have Disney Plus coming out November 6th, if I'm not mistaken, 6th, 12th?
The 13th, I think.
13th, okay, so whenever, it's coming out in November. Here's what you need to do. Okay, you're going to be doing this bundle package with ESPN Plus and Hulu.
Right.
So why don't you throw it in for subscribers? Hey, if you subscribe to the combo deal, under your Hulu account, we'll give you a digital copy of this movie.
See, I don't think that'll happen because that'd be like when Apple put a U2 album on every single Apple owner's Apple device, and they hated that.
But if they put it on there, not saying it's an extra bonus. Like, if you really are thinking about doing, hey, if you sign up, we'll throw this to you if you want. And then,
yeah, but I'm just having flashbacks to when Apple put the U2, and this is not a slight against the U2. I'm not, crapping on U2.
Don't you dare go after U2.
Listen, any U2 fans, delete your emails, delete your tweets. I'm not, shitting on U2. They are a very good band.
Amazing band.
But doing that just reminds me of when Apple decided to put a U2 album on everyone's device, whether they wanted it or not.
No, but this is what I'm saying. Give the option. Like, if you want it, here's the download code.
Right.
It's kind of like when, when you buy like tickets for movies from different sites and they throw you something. If you want it, here's the digital code. If they did something like that for New Mutants, I think that'd be something to appeal to some that are not necessarily ready to jump on board. Now, granted, I think everybody is going to jump on board when this comes out. No question. Yours truly is be top of the line. But I'm thinking for somebody that is not into the Marvel Disney style of the MCU, if they want to see something different, this might appeal to them. So you're going to cover your bases with everybody.
I think it's possible that they dump it on a streaming service like a Hulu, but I think if they're still looking at putting it out theatrically, because I mean, if they just dump it on a streaming service like Hulu, they're going to be eating a lot of money. So I think they're going to try and at least make a little bit of this money back that, they're going to be on the hook for whatever the budget is. I've tried looking up some numbers. Nobody's got some firm numbers on what the budget is for this film. And that's before we get into the cost for reshoots and what that, flying all the cast back in and rebuilding sets if they have to and that whole mess. I think what they would do is in the more likely thing is they'll put it out theatrically, but it'll be super short, like a couple weeks, limited release. Don't put it out in like 2,000 theaters like your typical release or whatever it is, 2,500, 3,000, whatever your normal release is. Limited release, real short, so that way you're not paying a theater in Des Moines, Iowa to have 7 showings at its local theater when nobody's coming.
I wonder if they would do something like when they did Batman Killing Joke. I know it's different studio, different everything, but how that went to the theaters for extremely limited run.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. This to me, I think, is what and after that, put it on the streaming service on Hulu like a month later, whatever it is. I just can't see them, like, as much as they want to just get this movie out and be done with it and have the headache off of their shoulders, it just makes far more sense to me to just dump it out, limited release, limited promotion too, because let's be honest, if promotion has already sunken the ship a little bit for the Fox studios, they're not going to want to put any more money into this thing if they already fear it has, quote, limited box office potential.
Like I said, I mean, it makes sense to do it that way. And I guess if they're really worried about that big of a financial loss, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just looking at it from the fan perspective. Like, you've had a very successful year. Even if there is one hiccup, and this is the hiccup, it's still going to do something. For at least anything, people are going to want to see why it's so bad.
Right.
You're going to have that contingent. There are people that go to movies to see bad movies and see why. You'll have that with this if it's really that bad.
Right.
I mean, you're going to have a very mixed crowd in there. You're going to have the comic book fans that want to see it because it's a comic book movie. And if it's really that bad, you're going to have the people that want to see it just to say, I saw it, and oh my gosh, it's that bad.
But the thing is, Fox has had a couple of flops this year. I mean, we mentioned Dark Phoenix. Stuber with Dave Bautista was a flop. The Art of Racing in the Rain, which opened this past weekend, or a couple weekends ago, was to just $8.1 million all weekend, was a flop. And then that's in comparison to what Disney had with Endgame, Aladdin, and Lion King, which I know that might be apples to oranges, but like, it still hurts your bottom line.
It hurts the bottom line. Like, I understand their point. Like I said, I want to just kind of bring it back tenfold. I understand their point. But I guess what I'm saying is, where are you going to lose more money? Holding it forever and not releasing it, or trying to make something out of it, like give it a limited release run, or throw it as an incentive for streaming. I mean, you have some options to do, and the question is, how really bad is it?
Right. I mean,
because that's making me interested in watching it.
I almost want to see like a behind the scenes book, or like a tell all book with just how bad things are, because there was a gentleman by the name of Jeff Bach, who is a box office analyst with Exhibitor Relations, who said, quote, if Disney hadn't bought Fox and they were just going along with business as usual, there'd still be layoffs and there'd be a for sale sign on the lot. There's no way they'd have been able to survive in this climate. And I think you look at some of the films that got canceled. I'm sorry, Play-Doh?
Yeah.
What? Oh, Mega Man is as bad as video game movies have been. And they've been bad. Like, hello, Doom. Yeah, I know it's got The Rock in it, but it's bad.
Yeah.
Like, but for every, like, Detective Pikachu movie, in my opinion, I know not everyone agrees with this, Ratchet and Clank film, there's a lot of bad video game movies. Like, okay, Mega Man probably might have, depending on what it was about, could have been bad, could have been good. But, like, prequel to The Sandlot? Why? Prequel to Pinocchio? Why? Like, just like just some of the stuff that they were just greenlighting that was just like, why? Like, I really think it might have been a saving grace that Disney bought out Fox.
I think so in tenfold. I think that what Disney's going to do with the properties moving forward is going to be really interesting to watch. Mm-hmm. Because now, does everything get Disney-fied, if that's a word?
Right.
You have to wonder that, because
I don't think so. I think what'll happen for that is they'll just be the parent with the wallet and the bank account, and Fox will be the kid needing an allowance, where whoever's in charge of Fox will go to, because Fox Studios will still be a thing. You're not going to go see a 20th Century Fox movie and see a Disney logo in front of it. You're just going to see it as is. It might say a division of Walt Disney Studios though, but I think it's just going to play out where Disney might, if they think something, if they're seeing the footage as it's filming and they're not really liking how it's looking, like, we don't think this will be good, you might want to take a look at this. But I don't think they're going to be going, do this movie, do that movie, do this movie, do that movie. To me, they're just the parent with the wallet and the kids asking for a allowance.
It's going to be an interesting thing to see moving forward with them.
Mm-hmm.
And where they go from here. I mean, obviously, Disney has a lot of choices to make if they want to make some of these movies.
They also got a big old vault to use.
Yeah, so Disney Plus is going to have a lot to watch when it comes out in November. But definitely hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What is your thoughts now with Disney's plan moving forward? Some of those movies really appeal to you that they're canceling, some not. And what is your thoughts on New Mutants? Like, let's get into that discussion, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
Hit us up on our social media, OchoDuroParlayHour.com. You can find all the links there. Join in the conversation because we want to talk to you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. The ODPH is proud sponsors of RoberCon 2019, happening September 28th and 29th. Don't miss out on Binghamton, New York's biggest sci-fi, fantasy, and gaming convention of the year. For badge details and more info, check out robercon.org. Coming back for the final segment on this edition of the ODPH Pad. Kick us off with those one-shots.
I got a couple things to talk about. Didn't mention it on the show last week, but it's worth mentioning this week. The next DC animated film is out. It is one we heard about greatly at New York Comic Con last year, and that is Batman Hush.
Yes.
To answer anyone's questions, yes, Catwoman is in the movie. Inside joke for those of us here at the panel.
Wow.
Yeah. Film is good. Film is very good. I won't go into spoilers yet since I know Ken hasn't seen it yet, but it is a very good film. It's got a great story. Only for me trips up a little bit at one point in the movie when Hush isn't there, because it just feels a little odd that Hush is there and Hush is doing his own thing, and then he's not there. Just the one kind of gripe for me. Other than that, it is very good. The next film they're going to be working on is Wonder Woman Bloodlines, which to me, there is like with all the DC animated films lately, there's been like a kind of sneak peek at in the special features when you watch the film. That one to me is going to be very interesting to see how they do, because at least from what and this is without knowing how they're going to do things in the film, but there's a lot of scenes that they show or tease that are from or what you've seen in the recent Wonder Woman film with Gal Gadot. So, even with, Steve Trevor crashing on the island and her getting the armor and wanting to leave, it's like, all right, how is this going to work? Like, it'd be one thing if the Wonder Woman film hadn't come out yet, and this is like the first time we're seeing her origin story in some form of media, but it's not. We just saw the film, and now we're going to see parts of it, so I don't know how that's going to work, but I'll be interested to see it when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Hush. I mean, the Jim Lee artwork in the comic is amazing, so the story I dig too, so I can't wait to pick that up.
Yeah. Got some other interesting news. I got a surprise announcement for Borderlands 3 today as we record. Wasn't expecting this. It was Ice-T is going to be in the video game.
Yes.
Yes, that Ice-T. If you go to his Twitter account, which is twitter.com/finallevel, or if you're on Twitter, go to @finallevel. He said, quote, "Sometimes the rumors are true. Borderlands 3 is going to be crazy. Why?" And he's in the game playing a character named Baser, which if you see it on screen, it looks like this stuffed bear wolf looking thing in a mech suit. And he just says, "Hey, Vault Hunter," which is what the characters you play at are. That's their job title. Give me a squeeze for old time's sake. So I have no idea what his character is going to be. I was already excited for that game. I'm just even more sold on it. It's going to be incredible.
It looks very, very cool. So, and Ice-T liked your tweet.
Yeah, he did. I quote tweeted it on my personal account, said as if I needed, even more reason to be excited for this game. So he liked it. So that was fun to see. Last one I got is a video game series near and dear to my heart. Got a reveal trailer for the next Need for Speed game. Yes, the long-running racing simulator or driving simulator, whatever you want to call it, is coming out. Titled Need for Speed Heat. Now, the interesting thing with this, and if you are familiar at all with Need for Speed's history over the years, it's by and large they have dealt with kind of made up places or places that are at least a little bit inspired. The one that comes to mind for me is Need for Speed Rivals, which came out in, I want to say 2016, 2017. Looked like it was very much kind of based off of the Pacific Northwest, even into parts of California. But by and large they did deal with made up or inspired places. It looks like this one might be taking place in Miami. Okay. Just based off of, you see the logo at the end, and it's almost got that like Miami Vice look to it, and just some of the scenery in the backgrounds. Not too much to go off of the gameplay. There's a little bit of gameplay, but I'm kind of skeptical about this one, because while I enjoy the Need for Speed franchise, there are games that are hit and miss. For me, the best one they've done recently was Need for Speed Rivals, because it had a simple plot. It really didn't get involved. There wasn't a lot of cutscenes. But then there are ones that are missed for me where I forget what it was, but there was a game before Need for Speed Rivals where it was very like, I enjoy the games when they're open world and you can kind of do whatever you want. And if you want to go do something fun, you can go do something fun, and then you can go do a mission. But where they're not fun for me are when it's just like, oh, you can't drive. Like, it's a car driving game. I want to be able to drive around in a Nissan GTR or a Lamborghini or a McLaren or whatever. Like, I'm never going to own these cars. I want to at least drive around in them virtually. Right. It's fun for me when Need for Speed is open world. When it's not fun for me is when it's very like linear and like you got to go mission to mission, and there's nothing in between you can do. Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see. The trailer looked kind of dope. I really don't know what to think of this. Need for Speed has been around for so long now. Yeah. It's almost like how many times can you reinvent the wheel? No pun intended. Yeah. So I'm very eager to see it, and when it comes out, I'll definitely have to try giving it a play somewhere. Yeah. So
my decision is out right now, but
Right.
definitely the trailer looked cool. So
Yeah.
I got to give approval on that thus far.
Yeah.
So for my one shots, talking about what's at the comic book shop this week, DC has their Superman event Leviathan is the latest issue is out, and Powers of X by Marvel, number 2. Obviously, the Hickman story, we're going to be covering it next week on the show. That's out. And also talking a little comics. Now, Pat, are you familiar with Valiant Comics?
A little bit.
Okay, well, you know that Vin Diesel is attached to the Bloodshot movie.
Yes.
They are now going to make the announcement that they're going to be restarting the Rye comic. Now, Rye has a tie to Bloodshot. It's set in the 41st century. And
It's a little ways in the future.
It's a ways in the future. It was kind of interesting. Like when I got started in the Valiant Comics, that's when I started reading it. So for me, this is very interesting to see how they're going to play out. And the writer that is attached to the relaunch coming in November, Dan Abnett.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
No.
He is part of the team that restarted the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise.
Oh.
For the comics.
Okay.
The Star-Lord
Okay.
Rocket team. So he is going to be taking the helm on that book when it comes out in November. I'm very excited to see what this is going to play out. Valiant, I think a lot of people are sleeping on right now. And when they start having the movies start coming, I think they're going to have a lot of spotlight on them, which they rightfully deserve. I think Valiant, like I said, their characters get slept on a lot. They are very, very good characters. And speaking of movies, we did see Hobbs and Shaw. We are not reviewing it on the show because what can
It's
you
amazing.
It's amazing for all the wrong reasons. You don't go for the script. You go for the action. You go to see The Rock and Jason Statham do Rock and Jason Statham things.
And other characters.
And other cameos in there, too. So they're going to start their own parallel Fast and Furious story.
Yeah.
Idris Elba has a symbiotic motorcycle. I'm convinced of it. So I think there's a Venom tie-in. I'm convinced. You can't tell me otherwise. You have to see it for yourself, but go for the action. Don't go for the script. And that's all. I'll leave it with that. But speaking of movies, because I had to throw that in there, too, Avengers Endgame did come out on Blu-ray.
Yep.
So it's finally released. You picked up your copy. I know you've watched it at least a couple times already.
Yep. It's great. It's even better with a good sound system. I will say that.
Yeah, and they do have the special features in there too.
Yep.
Stephen Pegg's Last Dance.
Yep.
The casting story behind Robert Downey Jr. joining the MCU.
Yeah.
They have a story about how Captain America's importance to the MCU as well. They have the Bro Thor kind of gag scene.
The Lebowski Thor.
Explaining it. They also have the bonus scenes, which the one I've seen is when everybody takes the knee.
Yeah.
Bowing to Tony, which...
Well, I'm not even bowing, just like paying respects.
Yeah, it's paying respects, bowing. Like, I don't know. Like, for me, it's a weird scene. So I'm kind of glad they kept it out.
You know what? I'm kind of on the fence too. Like I would have liked to see that in the film, but also at the same time, I'm glad they did put it in because that was already such an emotional scene. And then you get to and then right after that's the funeral scene. So like I remember in our showing, like people were already kind of sniffling and getting a little misty eyed. So like I feel like that just would have ruined everybody.
It probably would have.
Yeah.
So obviously that scene's in there, and then there's the Stanley Remembrance.
I'm avoiding that one, and it's not for like any slight against Marvel or Disney or the folks that worked on this. It's just the stuff I've read and from the people who've already seen it. It has put everyone in tears.
Yeah, it's definitely going to hit you. It's going to hit you pretty hard.
I gotta watch this when I'm at like one of my more strong emotional points here.
Obviously, but Avengers Endgame is now out on Blu-ray, so pick it up wherever you pick up Blu-rays. It's been out on digital for a while. Obviously, the highest-grossing movie of all time is a worthy addition to any collection.
So I can't wait for it to break the home box office records for digital sales and physical sales.
It's definitely going to do it.
It's going to do it.
So just wait for that. And I guess we have to plug where we're going to be at. September 28th, 29th, we're going to be at Robercon. Robercon.org for more information. Saturday between 11 and 1 in the time slot is the hashtag 607 podcast group. We don't know who's starting to do the panels, but for our panel, we can officially announce we are going to be covering the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Pad, Brag Eye Signal, Coach Duffy, who is returning to the entertainment edition for the first time since its first episode.
It's like a cameo appearance, and he don't come cheap.
He does not come cheap.
No.
We had to already deal with his arbitration to go get his old headphones.
Yeah.
He has a rider that we have to go accommodate before him to come down.
We'll say if the Robert Downey Jr. what he requires list is to be believed, Duffy trumps that.
Yeah, so he will be in attendance. And like we said, we're going to be on at somewhere between 11 and 12. We don't know when yet. We're going to find that out hopefully very soon. Three Fat Nerds, our buddies over there at the hashtag 607 podcast family, they're going to be doing a live show too as well. So Rich, Ron, and Diesel are going to be there. That's going to be a crazy panel. So if you're going to RoberCon, definitely make sure to be in attendance for that, because that is going to be a show between 11 and 1 on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Rich from Three Fat Nerds, Mike C. from Horror Zone 607 and I are going to be running the podcast workshop on Sundays.
Okay.
So it'll be a fun time. Definitely check out robercon.org for more information. The following week after that, the ODPH is going to be down in New York Comic Con. So if you're going to be down there, shoot us a line on Twitter, shoot us a direct line. Let us know. We'll pull up and say, hey, we're going to be making rounds down there. New York Comic Con is so close, my friend. It's always the best time of year for us. And our last plug, because news is breaking about this, so we don't have a lot to discuss.
Okay.
But kudos to Rich over at 3 Fat Nerds and 8122 Productions. He is going to be, I believe, one of the sponsors, the 8122 Productions, of BroomCon, which is going to be happening locally here in the 607 in May. It is very much in its infancy. We don't have anybody to announce who's going to be there. It's going to be the weekend of Free Comic Book Day. So
a good weekend.
Yes. So if you are in the 607 or want to visit, that is going to be a time to do it. We are going to be down there. I believe we are doing a panel as well.
Okay.
I don't have dates. I don't have anything. It's so brand new that I'm just going to tell you, stay tuned to the 8122 Productions Network. Obviously, stay tuned to OchoDuroParlayHour.com. As soon as we get some news, we're going to break it. But kudos to those guys. They have been putting in some work. They're going to be up at Sci-Fi and Horror Fest and Scaricon 2 in October. So definitely, if you are traveling to any cons on the East Coast, definitely pull up, say, hey, Mike C is going to be in attendance too from Horror Zone 607. It's a whole hashtag 607 podcast takeover. So get on board, folks, because it's going to be a heck of a ride. So the music you heard on today's episode is that of Crimson Brethren. Crimson Brethren is now formed the band Floodlands. For more information on that band and all the music you hear here on the ODPH, check out OchoDuroParlayHour.com and check under the music section on the webpage. Also check out hashtag 607 podcast. You can find out all the contact information for 3 Fat Nerds, Horror Zone 607, the whole hashtag 607 podcast group. Check out Parlay Points, where we're talking blogs on the show, so we interact in between shows. So definitely take a read if you haven't read already. There is so much on OchoDuroParlayHour.com that you need to check out. Just click it right now after the show, because that's all we got for this week. So for Padawan J,
Thank you.
I'm your host, Ken M. Thank you, as always, for listening to the ODPH podcast. We'll see you next time.